began. Let's ask Congressman Steve Scalise, Republican from Louisiana. Sir, thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Good to be with you, Kelly.
All right, so here we are talking about hope and change and bipartisanship, and yet there are members on both sides of the aisle who agree on one thing: bickering, rancor, and discord, and no bipartisanship. What happened?
Well, unfortunately, it seems like there's some people in the administration and in the congressional leadership that are more concerned about just ramming this massive spending bill through in a real short period of time without any oversight, as opposed to what I think is most important, that we get this right. And so that's why we're going to continue to try to lay out these alternatives to the president and to the Democratic leadership and ask them to come back to the table and let's try to pass a bill that addresses the problems with our economy, that will create jobs, as opposed to this massive $880 billion spending bill, largest spending bill in the history of our country.
You know, as we're talking, we're looking at the live video of what's coming in on the Senate floor right now. Senator John Kerry still talking about the deal, the tentative deal that the senators have reached on the Senate stimulus package version. But having looked at this, as we continue to follow it, look, this situation is something, as Senator Susan Collins, a Republican on your side of the aisle, said, the American people do not want partisan bickering. They want to see something done about what's happening in this country, and that is to save people from the unemployment rolls and to get people back to work and to make sure that Americans can walk around with some money in their pockets and actually begin to spend and save and do everything that they did normally until we hit this economic juncture.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. The problem with this bill is that this bill doesn't address those problems. This bill actually spends most of its money on growing big government. Those are failed policies of the past, and I think what you've got to look at is some of the tried and true things that have always worked to help get our economy going, and some of the things that we've put in our alternative plan that would actually cut taxes for middle-class families and small businesses to go and help create jobs. And every time this is done, you can go back to John F. Kennedy's tax cuts, to Reagan's tax cuts, even the Bush tax cuts. They have helped to get the economy going. What hasn't worked is some Congresses, both Republican and Democrat, have spent more money than what these tax cuts generated in new revenue. So it's important that we make tax cuts that will create jobs, but also control the growth of spending instead of this $880 billion massive spending bill that won't create jobs.
Listen, Congressman, I'm the first to understand exactly what you're talking about, what the members of the Republican Party are talking about. I also understand what the members of the Democratic Party are talking about. But I also understand the plight of some of the American people, those namely on the unemployment rolls, who are saying, we just need some help. And those who are suffering foreclosures, they're saying, look, you know, the left is pulling to the left, the right is pulling to the right, and in the middle is the heart of Americans being torn apart, torn asunder because of the partisan bickering that's going on, this great divide that isn't helping anyone. They need some CPR, congressmen performing responsibly.
Right, and I think that's something that we can get. If you look at the vote last week in the House, you actually had a bipartisan vote because both Republicans and Democrats, we had nearly a dozen Democrats join with us to vote against the spending bill because we laid out an alternative that actually would go to those tried and true methods of cutting taxes to create jobs so those middle-class families out there can actually get some relief. But if you look at this bill that they're ramming through right now, they're spending roughly $1 billion a minute trying to just ram through the largest spending bill in the history of the country that'll only make it worse for future generations, saddling them with more debt, and then it's going to increase inflation and devalue the dollar. That's not going to help the economy. So I think it's more important.
I'm not trying to cut you off, but how do we get back to the fact that we need to, that you guys need to do something there on Capitol Hill, sit down, talk this over, get over the acrimony, and get to the fact that you want to stimulate the economy and get both sides of the aisle participating as the president wants, as you obviously want, as all of the senators apparently want, but no one's agreeing to do anything, the right thing, and that's to help the American people.
Right, and that's why I think it's much more important. As some people that seem to be more concerned about just ramming something through in a short period of time, let's go back and look at doing something that will actually work to solve this problem. We've got Republicans and Democrats that are ready to work on a bipartisan solution, but let's just learn from the last financial bailout that did not work, because that was another example of where Congress tried to ram something through, $700 billion, and nobody can even tell you where the money is. I think those same problems are evident in this bill that they're ramming through now. So let's slow down and get it right. It's much more important to the families across this country that are struggling that we pass a bill that actually works to get the economy back on track. And that alternative is still sitting out there, and we're trying. We're going to do everything we can, and we'll sit down with the president if he would do that again, as well as with Democrats who join with us in trying to pass a bill that will get the economy back on track, as opposed to a bill that just adds hundreds of billions in new spending.
I hope people are listening, and I hope I hear your true intent there, and I appreciate it. I hope people are listening. I hope they'll do the right thing. Thank you, sir.
Hopefully so. Thank you, Kelly.
All right.